Welcome to USA Rift. Before we get started, do me a quick favor. Make sure to subscribe to the channel, like this explainer, leave a comment with your thoughts down below, and if you really want to support our work, consider becoming a channel member. It makes a huge difference, because today, we are exposing a really uncomfortable truth. Listen, you're not broke because you spend too much, but you could go broke because the financial system was never, ever designed for you to win on autopilot. Think about it. The accumulation phase of wealth, building it up, is what you've known your entire adult life. You put money in, you wait, you ignore the noise, and the market generally rewards you. But the decumulation phase, that exact moment your steady paycheck stops, that is a completely different beast. It operates on a ruthlessly different set of rules. So today, we're going to look at the hard data, the hidden cliffs, and the actual mechanics of how money works when you are the one signing your own paychecks.
Okay, let's dive right into this heavy question. Is $2 million actually enough to retire? For decades, you have been sold a very simple, very comforting lie by an industry that literally profits off your complacency. They tell you to just hit a magic number, apply a static withdrawal rate, and drift off into the sunset. Honestly, Wall Street loves a static number. It keeps you invested, it keeps their management fees rolling in month after month, and it makes financial planning look as easy as middle school math. But wealth decumulation doesn't care about your magic number. It doesn't care at all. It cares about timing. You could meticulously save $2 million, live a totally modest lifestyle, and still watch your entire portfolio completely collapse purely because of exactly when you chose to walk away from your job.
The secret to surviving retirement doesn't depend on average returns over a 30-year period. It depends entirely on the order of those returns. During your working years, market volatility is actually your friend, right? When the market drops, you're just buying cheaper shares on payday. It's a discount. But the second you retire, the math violently flips against you. We call this the retirement risk zone. It's that highly vulnerable window, usually the 5 years right before and the 5 years right after you retire. Imagine the sheer psychological terror of working 40 years, grinding it out, building your nest egg, finally turning in your badge, and then watching your life savings drop 30% in a matter of months. If the market crashes during this exact fragile window, a solid average return over the next 30 years absolutely will not save you.
To really understand how brutal this reality is, let's look at two hypothetical retirees. Now, don't just think of them as points on a spreadsheet. Think of them as your neighbors down the street, Lucky Larry and Unlucky Uma. Both Larry and Uma start out with identical $2 million portfolios. Both of them spent decades sacrificing, clipping coupons, doing everything right to get there. They both follow the exact same plan, withdrawing $120,000 a year, adjusting strictly for inflation. And over a 30-year period, they both experience the exact same average market returns. The kicker? Larry retires on the eve of a historic 10-year bull market. Uma retires on the eve of a brutal, grinding bear market. The only difference between extreme wealth and total ruin is the market's mood on the day they stopped working.
The math here is incredibly unforgiving. By year 11, Unlucky Uma is completely devastated. She's down to just $840,000. Why? Well, because when the market dropped early in her retirement, her life didn't just hit pause. She still needed to buy groceries. She still had to pay those skyrocketing property taxes. She still had to keep the heat on in the winter. To get that $120,000 in cash to live on, she was forced to liquidate her shares at absolute rock-bottom prices. And those shares, they are now gone forever. They can never participate in the eventual market recovery. It is the financial equivalent of a starving farmer eating her own seed corn during a drought. Uma has permanently hollowed out her capital. Meanwhile, Lucky Larry, he's sitting on over $2.6 million. He is essentially immunized against any future crashes.
So this brings us to a concept you absolutely must understand if you want to survive. It's called sequence of returns risk. Simply put, it's the danger that poor market returns early in retirement permanently damage a portfolio, even if the long-term averages look totally fine on paper. This is exactly why relying blindly on a static model, like the rigid 4% rule, is a massive psychological trap. Those free online retirement calculators assume a flat, predictable universe that simply doesn't exist in reality. They project a smooth, steady upward slope, lulling people into a dangerous false sense of security. But life doesn't happen in averages. You don't pay your mortgage with a 30-year average. If you just close your eyes and blindly withdraw your fixed amount while the market bleeds out, you are going to cross a mathematical point of no return.
But here's the thing. Market crashes aren't the only threat lurking in the risk zone. What accelerates the portfolio collapse before age 65? People meticulously plan for inflation, right? They hire experts to mitigate their taxes. But almost everyone leaves a massive, gaping blind spot for this specific vulnerability. There's a hidden multiplier that acts like a silent siphon on your wealth. It's a structural trap just waiting in the shadows for early retirees who step away from their employer coverage before Medicare finally kicks in.
24%. I really want to let that number sink in for a moment. According to the data, if enhanced premium tax credits expire, the average silver or gold healthcare plan could cost nearly 1/4 of a 60-year-old's entire annual income. 24%. Healthcare and early retirement isn't just another line item on your budget that grows with standard inflation. It is its own vicious compounding curve driven by something the industry calls age-rating step-ups. Imagine opening a premium renewal letter from your insurance company on your 60th birthday, only to see your exact same coverage jump by thousands of dollars simply because you got 1 year older. If you aren't incredibly strategic, health premiums alone will entirely devour your portfolio.
The brutal reality of the Affordable Care Act subsidy cliff lies entirely in the margins. If you engineer your income correctly, your premium is capped at a manageable, subsidized 8.5% of your income. But the cliff is merciless. If you take an uncontrolled withdrawal from your traditional 401k, or let's say you trigger one accidental capital gain and you earn just $1 single over that threshold, you completely fall off the cliff. The subsidies vanish instantly. Suddenly you're paying that devastating 24%. It is a catastrophic budget killer that forces you to draw even more heavily from your portfolio just to stay afloat, violently accelerating your path to absolute zero.
But here is where you take control back. The system has loopholes, and the wealthy know exactly how to use them. To survive the healthcare cliff, you have to artificially lower your modified adjusted gross income, or MAGI. You do this by engineering your withdrawals. First, you draw from your taxable brokerage cost basis because you already pay taxes on that principal, so the IRS doesn't count it as new income. Next, you cash in years of saved unreimbursed health savings account receipts. You can pull that money out years later, completely tax-free. Then, you pull your original Roth IRA contributions, which again, do not count toward your MAGI. By mixing these invisible income streams with very small, strictly controlled 401k withdrawals, you artificially stay under the subsidy threshold, potentially saving yourself tens of thousands of dollars a year. It feels like learning a forbidden wealth secret, but it is entirely 100% legal.
If there is one absolute truth to take away from this explainer, it is this. The system punishes rigidity and it heavily rewards flexibility. You cannot approach decumulation with passive hope. You cannot just pick a withdrawal number on day one, set it on autopilot, and close your eyes for 30 years. Surviving the risk zone requires structural, dynamic strategies. You need a deep defensive arsenal to protect your seed corn when the economic weather inevitably turns violent.
Okay, so let's break down the first weapon in that defensive arsenal, the 3-bucket strategy. This methodically segments your portfolio to create a mathematical and honestly a psychological safety net. Bucket 1 is the now bucket. This holds 0 to 2 years of living expenses in absolute safe cash or short-term bonds. Bucket 2 is the soon bucket, 2 to 10 years of income-focused investments, things like dividends. And bucket 3 is later, growth assets that are meant to be completely untouched for a decade. Having 2 years of pure cash in bucket 1 isn't just about the math. It's about being able to actually sleep at night when the news networks are screaming about a recession. When the market crashes, you don't panic. You don't sell your growth stocks at a massive loss. Instead, you live entirely out of bucket 1, giving your growth investments the exact thing they need most to survive, the time to recover.
But what if you want to start with a higher withdrawal rate, say 5.2 to 5.6%, instead of that ultra-conservative, rigid 4% rule? Enter the Guyton-Klinger guardrails. This is a dynamic spending model, and it's something Wall Street rarely talks about because it requires active, ongoing discipline instead of just passive management. Instead of a static withdrawal, you commit to strict automatic spending adjustments that are dictated by your portfolio's actual real-time performance. It basically turns your withdrawal rate into a highly responsive throttle. So here's how the throttle works. When the market drops and your withdrawal rate accidentally spikes 20% above your initial target, the capital preservation rule kicks in with brutal efficiency. You are forced to cut your spending by 10%. Think about the microscopic reality of that. If your planned withdrawal was $100,000, you are now forcing yourself to live on $90,000. How does that change your daily life? Conversely, if the market booms, the prosperity rule triggers, giving you a 10% raise. And crucially, the inflation rule dictates that if the market is negative for the year, you skip your annual inflation adjustment entirely. These rules act as automated circuit breakers, protecting your portfolio from ever crossing that fatal threshold.
But I promise you the uncomfortable truth on this channel, so we have to look at the dark side of this strategy.
As financial researcher Karsten Jeska bluntly puts it, you replace the small risk of running out of money with a moderate risk of large spending cuts. If the market completely tanks, if we hit a prolonged stagnation like the 1970s, or God forbid another Great Depression, these dynamic guardrails will force extreme austerity. Historical models show that in terrible economic conditions, following these rules could literally slash your real, inflation-adjusted income by 50%. What does a 50% pay cut in retirement actually look like? It looks like selling the RV. It looks like downsizing the home you raised your children in. It looks like skipping the cross-country vacations you promised your spouse. You won't run out of money, but you might not be able to afford the life you spent 40 years dreaming about.
So the tension really remains. If static rules run out of money and dynamic rules force painful, lifestyle-destroying pay cuts during crashes, how do we actually win? How do we build an unbreakable income floor that allows us to breathe easy? We need a final, powerful structural defense, something that protects against both sudden market crashes and the creeping, quiet risk of simply outliving our own money.
Introducing the Social Security Bridge. This is the strategy the wealthy use to maximize government benefits. Instead of claiming Social Security at age 62 out of pure fear, you deliberately delay claiming until age 70. To survive your 60s, you draw heavily from your own portfolio, intentionally depleting your own assets early on. Now, people are terrified of draining their portfolios early. It goes against every single instinct they developed during their working years. But overcoming that psychological fear is the key to unlocking this structural defense. It functions exactly like a DIY annuity. You are fronting your own cash today to buy an absolutely massive government-backed, inflation-adjusted guaranteed payout tomorrow.
Let's walk through the exact chronological path of this bridge, slowly and methodically. At age 62, the bridge begins. You calculate exactly what Social Security would have paid you, and you intentionally withdraw that exact amount from your IRA instead. Fast forward to age 65, and Medicare kicks in. This acts as a massive relief valve, entirely eliminating that brutal ACA healthcare cliff we talked about earlier. It acts as a major pressure release on your portfolio drawdown. Finally, at age 70, the bridge ends. You stop the heavy portfolio withdrawals, and you turn on Social Security. Because you waited, that guaranteed monthly check is now a staggering 77% higher than it would have been at 62.
The power of this strategy is practically unmatched in the financial world. Every single year you delay past full retirement age, the government basically guarantees an 8% return. Try finding a risk-free 8% return anywhere else in the market. It secures a massive inflation-protected income floor for the rest of your life, permanently reducing the stress on whatever remains of your portfolio. But most importantly, it maximizes survivor benefits. Think about it. This isn't just about personal wealth. This is an act of love. When you die, your surviving spouse receives the higher of the two benefit amounts. By maxing out your check at age 70, you are fundamentally securing the financial survival of a widowed partner who might outlive you by 10 or even 15 years. Retirement is not a finish line. It is the beginning of a highly strategic survival game. The accumulation phase, that was about patience. The decumulation phase is about architecture. Sequence of returns risk, silent healthcare cliffs, dynamic withdrawal limits. The system is deeply, deeply complex. And the absolute worst part of wealth decumulation? Most people will never realize how this system actually works until they are already trapped in it.
Stay flexible. Engineer your withdrawals, survive the risk zone. You now have the structural playbook, the bucket strategy to buy time, guardrails to throttle your spending, the Magi loopholes to survive the massive healthcare cliff, and the bridge strategy to build an unbreakable floor. Take control of your wealth, because I promise you, the system will absolutely not do it for you. Thank you so much for watching this USI Rift Explainer. If this opened your eyes to how money really works behind the scenes, make sure to subscribe to the channel right now. Like this explainer, drop a comment below on what you thought of these strategies, and please support us by becoming a channel member. We'll see you in the next one.